Hi, this is Roger in Finland, and today I want to talk about Olympus's file splitting in video. And for the impatient ones, yes, Olympus cameras, at least the EM1 Mark II, does split files while recording video. No, it is not a limitation of the SD cards. No, it is not about the file formats. Other cameras don't do it with the same cards. Olympus does it. But now, let's go for some more details. I saw somebody asking in a Facebook group related to Olympus cameras, might have been the OMD EM1 or just OMD users in general, about does Olympus split files while doing video and is there any way around it? Some of the answers were related that no, there's no way around it, but it's not such a big deal because you can just put them one next to each other and it just works, which is true and that's pretty nice. However, there were some people arguing or making the case that it's not the problem of Olympus's cameras, but it's the problem of SD cards and file formats, and therefore it happens to all the cameras. I don't quite agree, and I'm going to tell you why. Well, my first counter-argument is that using the same cards with Olympus and with Sony, because I just happen to have these two cameras at home, Olympus does split the files and Sony does not. Therefore, it cannot be a problem of the cameras, or it's not something that goes across brands. The second part is that the argument was so that SD cards, because they are formatted in FAT32, they cannot have bigger files than 4 GB. It is true that SDHC cards are formatted in FAT32 and can't have files bigger than 4 GB, and still the Olympus is splitting them at 3.5 GB for whatever reason. However, most of us, especially for video, are using SDXC cards, which are formatted in ExFAT, and therefore they do not have the limitation of the size files to 4 GB. SDHC cards, the capacities go from 2 GB to 32 GB, and the SDXC that we mostly use nowadays go from 32 up to, I believe it's 1 TB. I think that 2 TB is something else already, but I haven't seen those cards in the market. Olympus does split the files. Other camera brands don't, and at least I know of Sony, Panasonic, and Zcam, because I've had them, they do not split the files. As I'm showing here, I had this camera and the A6400, one next to the other one, shooting exactly the same silly Smurf scene, both of them set at 4K, which is roughly 100 megabits per second, so 12.5 megabytes per second. I had the cameras running for about a bit over 10 minutes or so, and you can see the size of the files. And you can see that Olympus split them at about 3.5 GB and the Sony did it. In both cases, I was using these cards, which are the ProGrade. This is a bit older model, but they are the V60 cards from ProGrade. This has a max read speed of 200 megabytes per second, but they are anyway V60 cards. And of course, because they are 64 gigabytes, the two cards that I had in the two cameras, both of them are SDXC, which means that they are formatted in ExFAT, which means that they can, if the camera would do it, but Olympus doesn't, hold files bigger than 4 GB. This was mostly a petty video and trying to explain a little bit better with better argumentation why it's not a card issue and it is an Olympus issue, the splitting of the files. As I said in the beginning, it's not such a big deal, it's just a tiny bit annoying for some reasons. In my case, I usually shoot with an external microphone, external audio recorder, and then in DaVinci Resolve, I just auto-sync the video file with the audio file. Both of them are almost the same length and it just works. In the case of these Olympus cameras, because it's splitting them, I need to do that work a bit more manually, or a lot more manually. Not a big deal, and one nice thing is, again, putting them one next to the other. There's no problem with syncing audio, there's no problem with frames dropping or being dropped or not being consecutive. It just, files are being split, small annoyance, you don't have to do that much work in post. But I would prefer that Olympus, since they can obviously use modern cards, SDHC, and fast enough, and some of these cameras, including this one, which is the EM1 Mark II, and it's already a little bit older, has pretty high data rates that you would not get away with SDHC cards, that they would stop implementing the file splitting because it's probably unnecessary. At least it would make my life easier. So, is it a problem for Olympus? It is. Do other brands have this problem? They don't. Is it a big deal? No, not quite. You can get around it, but it would be nicer if they would fix it. So, there you go. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please like and subscribe, and we're gonna see you soon for some more content.